Alexis Christine Haynes. She was only 18 years old when her face appeared on television screens across America. Alexis Haynes seemed to have it all: youth, beauty, and a starring role on Pretty Wild and E! Network reality show that followed her glamorous life in Los Angeles. She and her friends were chasing fame, living the dream that so many young girls fantasized about. But behind the cameras and designer outfits, Alexis was living a double life that would soon explode into one of Hollywood's most shocking scandals. Between 2008 and 2009, a series of brazen burglaries rocked the entertainment world. Celebrities were being targeted in their own homes. Orlando Bloom, Paris Hilton, Rachel Bilson. Their mansions were broken into, and hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of jewelry, designer clothes, and luxury watches vanished. The media called it the bling ring, and investigators with the Los Angeles Police Department were working overtime to catch the thieves. Then the evidence started piling up. Surveillance footage showed young people entering these homes. Stolen property was recovered, and the trail led straight to Alexis Haynes and her friends. According to court documents and reports from ABC News and the Los Angeles Times, she was directly involved in the break-in at Orlando Bloom's Hollywood Hills mansion. On May 10, 2010, Alexis stood in a Los Angeles courtroom facing serious charges. She pleaded no contest to first-degree residential burglary. The judge wasn't lenient. She was sentenced to 180 days in Los Angeles County Jail, 3 years of probation, a 2-year suspended sentence, and ordered to pay restitution to Orlando Bloom. She was also told to stay away from him and her accomplices. She began her sentence at the Century Regional Detention Facility in Lynwood. But California's overcrowded jail system worked in her favor. After serving just 30 days, she was released in July 2010 due to good behavior and overcrowding, as confirmed by Sheriff's Department records. The young socialite who once dreamed of fame got it, but not the way she imagined. Dana Michelle Plato. Everyone knew her as Kimberly Drummond, the sweet daughter on Different Strokes. Dana Plato had been America's sweetheart on NBC, playing the wholesome girl in a wealthy Park Avenue family that adopted 2 boys from Harlem. The show was a massive hit throughout the late 1970s and early 1980s. But when the series ended, so did Dana's career. Hollywood moved on and she couldn't. By 1991, she was only 19 years old and drowning. Work had dried up completely. She was battling addiction and couldn't pay her bills. Desperation does terrible things to people. On a day in February 1991, Dana walked into a video store on Sahara Avenue in Las Vegas with a pellet gun in her hand. According to police reports cited by the Deseret News and Las Vegas Sun, she pointed what looked like a real firearm at the clerk and demanded cash. It was a robbery born of desperation, not evil. But here's the twist. The clerk recognized her from television. After she left, he immediately called the police and helped them identify her. She was arrested nearby within hours. The arrest made national headlines. America's former sweetheart was now a criminal. In January 1992, a Clark County judge sentenced her to 5 years of probation. The Associated Press reported that she stood in court expressing deep remorse, saying she'd made a terrible mistake and never meant to hurt anyone. But the story didn't end there. Just months later, she violated probation by being caught with controlled substances. The judge revoked her probation and sent her to the Clark County Detention Center, where she served 30 days. After her release, Dana tried desperately to rebuild her life. She took small film roles and gave interviews about her struggles with addiction, as documented by the Las Vegas Review-Journal and Washington Post. But the damage was done. On May 8, 1999, Dana Plato died at age 34 in Moore, Oklahoma. The medical examiner ruled it a suicide by prescription drug overdose. It happened just one day after a radio interview where she'd talked about wanting to move forward with her life. Her tragic story became a cautionary tale about child stars and the dark side of early fame. Mae West. The year was 1927, and Mae West was already causing chaos on Broadway. Born in Brooklyn and raised in vaudeville, she wasn't your typical actress. She wrote her own plays, she controlled her own image, and she absolutely refused to play by society's rules. Her latest production was called Sex. Yes, that was actually the title, and it dealt with female desire and morality in ways that made polite society absolutely furious. The play wasn't officially endorsed by Broadway theaters, but it didn't matter. Audiences packed the house night after night. They wanted to see what all the scandal was about. But religious groups and city officials were horrified. They called it obscene, immoral, and dangerous to America's youth. On February 9, 1927, police raided the Daily's 63rd Street Theater during a performance. Mae West and her entire cast were arrested on the spot and charged with corrupting the morals of youth. The trial in Manhattan was a media circus. The court found her guilty of violating New York's obscenity laws. On April 19, 1927, Judge Charles C. Knott sentenced her to 10 days in the women's workhouse on Welfare Island. It was meant to humiliate her and make an example out of her. But Mae West didn't do humiliation. She arrived at the prison the next day, wearing silk underwear beneath her prison uniform. She gave interviews from her cell, charmed the guards, and turned the whole thing into a publicity stunt. After serving just 8 days, she was released early for good behavior on April 27, 1927. The story dominated newspapers across the country. Instead of destroying her career, the arrest made her more famous than ever. Within a few years, she became one of Hollywood's biggest stars, starring in She Done Him Wrong and I'm No Angel in 1933, two of the highest-grossing films of the era. Her wit, sexuality, and refusal to apologize made her a legend. Iris Meredith. Iris Meredith was on her way up in Hollywood. In the mid-1940s, she'd signed a contract with RKO Pictures and was appearing in westerns like Trail Street in 1947 and Under Nevada Skies in 1946. She was young, beautiful, and had that classic Hollywood glamour. The future looked bright. But in 1947, everything came crashing down in the most unexpected and bizarre way. She became embroiled in a property dispute with a former business associate named Nick Gianakles over a Hollywood Hills home. Things got ugly fast. According to Los Angeles County court records and extensive Los Angeles Times coverage, Gianakles accused Iris of doing something absolutely shocking, kidnapping him. He claimed that she and several accomplices forced him and an employee into a car, drove them to a secluded canyon, and left them tied up on the roadside. It sounded like something out of a crime movie, not real life. Iris denied everything. She insisted it was a conspiracy to destroy her career and reputation. She fought the charges hard. But in 1947, a jury didn't believe her. They found her guilty of kidnapping, conspiracy, and assault. The conviction stunned Hollywood. In 1949, Los Angeles Times photographers captured her surrendering to the Los Angeles County Sheriff to begin her sentence. She was sentenced to 5 years to life. She was processed through the county jail and transferred to the California Institution for Women in Tehachapi. But this story has a twist. In the years that followed, legislative reviews and parole board investigations revealed serious problems with the case. There were irregularities in witness testimony and procedural errors that suggested she might not have received a fair trial. Public support began building. Hollywood figures and journalists started calling for her release. In 1951, California Governor Earl Warren reviewed the findings and commuted her sentence to time served. She was freed after serving approximately 2 years. After her release, Iris quietly returned to limited television work, but mostly stayed out of the spotlight. Her promising career never recovered, but at least she'd gotten her freedom back. Lila Leeds. In September 1948, 19-year-old Lila Leeds was a rising starlet under contract with Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer. She'd appeared in Lady in the Lake in 1947 and Green Dolphin Street, and the studio was grooming her as one of their young hopefuls. The Los Angeles Times described her as having real potential. But one night in Laurel Canyon changed everything. Los Angeles police raided a home late at night and found a small amount of marijuana inside. They also found 2 people, Lila Leeds and one of Hollywood's biggest male stars, Robert Mitchum. The arrest exploded across every newspaper in America. This was the post-war era when marijuana possession was treated as a serious crime, and the scandal was massive. According to the Los Angeles Police Department blotter and United Press bulletins, both were arrested on the spot. For Lila, who was still building her career, the timing couldn't have been worse. MGM was furious. The studio system didn't tolerate scandal, especially drug-related arrests. On February 10, 1949, Lila appeared before a Los Angeles Superior Court judge. According to the Los Angeles Times, she pleaded guilty to marijuana possession. The judge sentenced her to 60 days in Los Angeles County Jail, the same sentence given to Robert Mitchum. United Press reports confirmed she was to serve the time immediately with no probation or delay. Jail records show she completed the entire 60-day sentence without early release. But when she walked out in the spring of 1949, her career was already over. MGM had quietly terminated her contract. No other studio would touch her. Casting directors refused to hire her. Desperate for work, she agreed to appear in She Shoulda Said No, a 1949 exploitation film that dramatized her own arrest and was marketed as a moral warning about drug use. Author R. Miller's 2004 book Hollywood Confidential chronicled how the arrest permanently destroyed her reputation in the industry. Lila eventually retreated from Hollywood entirely, married briefly, and lived a quiet life away from the cameras. Lynn. She was adorable, talented, and seemed destined for a long career in Hollywood. Lynn became famous as a child actress playing Dodie Harper Douglas on the hit television series My Three Sons from 1969 to 1972. Millions of Americans watched her every week. She also appeared in films like Cry Blood, Apache in 1970, and Walking Tall in 1973, proving she could handle both TV and movies. But as she entered her teenage years, the acting roles slowed down. That's normal for child stars. Hollywood often doesn't know what to do with them once they grow up. Dawn stepped back from the spotlight and tried to live a more normal life. But in 1979, when she was 18 years old, something went wrong. She was arrested in San Bernardino County, California, and charged with misdemeanor theft. Court microfilm records from 1979 confirmed the conviction. The details of what she stole and why were never made fully public, but the case drew some media attention. A 1980 People magazine feature about former child stars who'd faced struggles after leaving Hollywood referenced her arrest. The judge sentenced her to 30 days in county jail. However, recognizing that she was a first-time offender and still young, the court granted her permission to serve the sentence on weekends only. This lenient arrangement allowed her to maintain some normalcy in her life while paying her debt to society. After completing her sentence, Dawn made a decisive choice. She walked away from acting completely. She married, started a private life far from Los Angeles, and rarely spoke to the media. Unlike some former child stars who keep trying to recapture past glory, she chose peace and privacy. Her story is one of quiet redemption. A young woman who made a mistake, paid for it, and moved on. Dedra Hoffman. Growing up as the daughter of Lonnie Anderson meant living in the glow of Hollywood glamour. Lonnie was one of television's biggest stars in the 1980s, playing Jennifer Marlowe on WKRP in Cincinnati. Everyone loved her. And her teenage daughter, Dedra Hoffman, occasionally appeared on set and seemed comfortable in that world of cameras and celebrities. But in the spring of 1986, Dedra made a decision that shocked everyone who knew the family. She was arrested in Los Angeles for driving under the influence. According to People magazine, the arrest stunned fans who associated Lonnie Anderson's family with success, beauty, and perfection. The case moved quickly through juvenile court. Because Dedra was a minor, most of the records were sealed to protect her privacy. That's standard procedure in California for juvenile cases. But court reports confirmed that she was adjudicated delinquent under the state's DUI statutes. The sentence was immediate and clear: 10 days in juvenile detention. The Los Angeles Times and Associated Press both confirmed that she served the full term. For a teenager from a privileged Hollywood family, those 10 days must have been a wake-up call. After her release, Dedra made a choice that probably saved her life. She withdrew completely from the spotlight that had always surrounded her mother. She focused on finishing school, building a private life far from television cameras, and staying out of trouble. She kept her name out of the tabloids and avoided the pitfalls that have destroyed so many children of celebrities. Her story could have gone much differently. She could have spiraled, become another cautionary tale about Hollywood kids. But she didn't. She took her punishment, learned from it, and built a quiet, stable life. Sometimes the best ending is the one nobody hears about. Tatum O'Neal. In 1973, a 10-year-old girl made history. Tatum O'Neal starred opposite her father, Ryan O'Neal, in the film Paper Moon and won the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress. She became the youngest person ever to win a competitive Oscar, a record that still stands today. She was talented, charming, and seemed to have a golden future ahead of her. But growing up in Hollywood's spotlight came with a price. By her late teens, Tatum was struggling with substance abuse. The pressure of early fame, a complicated relationship with her father, and the chaos of the entertainment industry had taken their toll. On June 19, 1987, when she was 19 years old, Los Angeles police arrested her for possession of cocaine and marijuana. According to the Los Angeles Times, officers found a small quantity of drugs on her. The arrest made headlines across the country. America's youngest Oscar winner was now facing drug charges. The Associated Press reported on June 20, 1987, that instead of sending her to jail, the California court took a different approach. The judge ordered her to spend approximately 48 hours in a county detoxification facility and complete a rehabilitation program. This reflected a growing understanding that addiction should be treated as a medical issue, not just a criminal one, especially for young offenders. The court-ordered treatment was her wake-up call. In later interviews, including a 2004 People magazine feature called Tatum's Second Act and a 2005 New York Times interview, she opened up about her addiction struggles. She described the 1987 arrest as a turning point that forced her to confront her demons. She went on to rebuild her career with new film and television appearances. She also wrote a memoir detailing her difficult childhood and recovery journey. Her story became one of resilience, proof that even after hitting rock bottom, it's possible to climb back up. Diana Sarah Carey, Baby Peggy. She was born in 1918 as Diana Sarah Carey, but the world knew her as Baby Peggy, one of Hollywood's first child superstars. In the silent film era of the early 1920s, she was everywhere. By age 6, she'd earned over $1 million and starred in major hits like Captain January and Helen's Babies. Her face was as recognizable as any adult star's. She was Hollywood's $1 million baby. But behind the glamorous publicity photos and premiere parties, something terrible was happening. Her father managed her career and controlled all her money. And he was losing it. Bad investments, poor decisions, mismanagement. By the time Diana reached her teenage years, the family fortune was completely gone. They were broke. By 1935, Diana was just 17 years old and facing a crisis. According to her autobiography, whatever happened to Baby Peggy and Los Angeles juvenile court notes cited in that work, she was sent to jail in connection with a minor forgery charge. The exact details remain somewhat unclear, but it happened during a period of deep financial and emotional hardship. The offense was small, and the detention was brief. But think about what that meant. A girl who'd been on top of the world at age 6 was behind bars at age 17. It was a stunning fall from grace that few people knew about at the time. After her release, Diana made a decision. She left the film industry completely and never looked back. She rebuilt her life through writing, becoming a respected author and film historian. She chronicled the hidden struggles of early child performers, telling the truth about what happened to kids like her in old Hollywood. She married twice, first to actor Gordon Ayers and later to artist Bob Carey. She dedicated her later years to preserving the real stories of Hollywood's silent era, the ones that didn't make it into the glossy magazines. She died in 2020 at the age of 101, having outlived almost everyone from her era and having told the truth they tried to hide. Sally Horner. In early 1948, 11-year-old Sally Horner was just a regular girl in Camden, New Jersey. She was bright, curious, and occasionally appeared as a child extra in small local productions and community film reels, the kind of background work that let local kids be on camera for a moment. She was innocent, trusting, and had no idea what was about to happen to her. According to Camden juvenile court records cited in Sarah Weinman's book The Real Lolita, Sally's first brush with the law came that year when she was caught shoplifting a 5-cent notebook from a Woolworth store. It was a childish mistake, the kind of thing lots of kids do without thinking. She was briefly held in a juvenile facility before being released to her mother. It should have been forgotten, a minor incident in a child's life. But just months later, in June 1948, everything changed. Sally was approached outside her school by a man who introduced himself as Frank Warner, an FBI agent. He told her she was still in trouble for the shoplifting incident and needed to come with him for questioning. She was terrified and believed him. Why wouldn't she? She was just a little girl. But the man wasn't an FBI agent. His real name was Frank LaSalle, a 51-year-old mechanic and convicted child molester who'd recently been released from prison. As documented in FBI reports and court records quoted in Weinman's research, he kidnapped Sally and held her captive for 2 years. He took her across the country, Baltimore, Dallas, San Jose, posing as her father and enrolling her in schools under fake names. Throughout those 2 years, he subjected her to continual abuse. The Los Angeles Times and Associated Press reported in 1950 that neighbors finally grew suspicious and called police, leading to his arrest and Sally's rescue. Federal court records confirm that Frank LaSalle was sentenced to 30 to 35 years in prison for kidnapping. Sally was returned home to Camden and tried to reclaim a normal life. But the trauma was too deep. Just 2 years later, in August 1952, she was killed in a car accident near Woodbine, New Jersey. She was only 15 years old. The Camden Courier-Post confirmed her death. Her story later inspired Vladimir Nabokov's controversial novel Lolita, though few people knew the real girl behind it. Frances Farmer. Frances Farmer was brilliant, beautiful, and absolutely unwilling to play Hollywood's game. Born in Seattle in 1913, she started performing as a teenager and quickly caught Hollywood's attention with her raw intensity and fierce independence. By the mid-1930s, she'd signed with Paramount Pictures and was starring in acclaimed films like Come and Get It and Rhythm on the Range in 1936 and Flowing Gold in 1940. Critics loved her, but she hated the studio system. She refused to conform, spoke her mind, and battled publicly with executives. Behind the scenes, she was struggling with alcohol dependence and mental health issues. The pressure of fame was crushing her, and she was fighting back in all the wrong ways. Everything exploded on January 14, 1943, inside a Los Angeles courtroom. She'd been arrested for violating probation related to earlier driving and disorderly conduct charges. When she was brought before the judge that day, something in her snapped. Eyewitnesses and reporters from the Los Angeles Times described a shocking scene. Frances started shouting at officers, refusing to sit down, cursing at the judge. Then she picked up an inkwell from the courtroom table and threw it across the room. It was total chaos. The judge had seen enough. He declared her in contempt of court and sentenced her on the spot to 180 days in Los Angeles County Jail. She was taken away immediately to begin serving her time. But jail was only the beginning of her nightmare. After serving her sentence, Frances was transferred to state psychiatric care. She was eventually confined for years at Western State Hospital in Washington. Records from the Washington State Archives confirm repeated institutionalization throughout the 1940s, including reports of controversial treatments like electroshock therapy and possibly even lobotomy, though the latter remains disputed by historians. In later years, she managed brief returns to stage work and local television, trying desperately to restore her career. But the shadow of her 1943 sentencing and institutionalization never left her. She struggled with the stigma of mental illness for the rest of her life. Frances Farmer died in 1970 at age 56, a tragic reminder of how Hollywood destroyed those who refused to obey. Victoria Vetri. She was stunning, talented, and seemed to embody everything glamorous about 1960s Hollywood. Victoria Vetri was born on September 26, 1944, and began her career as a teenager in Los Angeles. She appeared in popular television series like Perry Mason, Batman, and Bonanza, proving she could handle different genres with ease. In 1968, Playboy magazine named her Playmate of the Year, a title that brought her national recognition and opened even more doors. She also starred as Angela Dorian in the 1970 Hammer Films production When Dinosaurs Ruled the Earth, a prehistoric fantasy that became a cult classic. Her life was the definition of Hollywood success. But decades later, on October 16, 2010, police received a call that would change everything. They arrived at Victoria's Hollywood apartment to find her husband, Bruce Rathgeb, suffering from a gunshot wound. According to authorities' reports, there had been a violent argument between the couple, and Victoria had shot him. Rathgeb survived, and Los Angeles prosecutors charged her with attempted murder. The case drew massive media coverage because reporters quickly identified her as the former Playboy Playmate of the Year, a glamorous icon from another era now facing life-altering criminal charges. In 2011, after extensive legal proceedings, she entered a plea of no contest to a reduced charge of attempted voluntary manslaughter. According to the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office, the plea was accepted in early September 2011. On September 7th or 8th, 2011, a Los Angeles Superior Court judge sentenced her to 9 years in California State Prison. News outlets including CBS Los Angeles, ABC7, and the Associated Press reported that Victoria was taken into custody immediately to begin serving her sentence. She ultimately served several years before being paroled. After her release, she retreated completely from public life, leaving behind the glamorous world she'd once inhabited. Her story is a stark reminder that fame and beauty can't protect anyone from the consequences of violence.